It felt like my soul had been someplace else for a really, really long time.
I entered into the eye of the storm of grief that I had been carrying. I began to cry.
The littlest thing would just send me into an anxiety spiral that, like, it's just one little thing. Why is this little thing ruining my day?
Eleusinia is a unique psilocybin retreat based in Mexico with a focus on meditation, neuroscience, and brain health.
I had zero doubt that this was something that I was going to go through and actually do.
That self-compassion sort of has trickled into every little part of my life.
I hadn't laughed that hard in so long.
The profoundness with which I experienced like reality, the magnitude of the beauty was just completely overwhelming.
Thank you so much for coming to the show. Can you tell our audience a little bit about who you are, a bit about your background, and why you chose Eleusinia?
Well, I guess I'm a seeker. I'm curious and have been interested in psychedelics for a long time. I'm a professional. I'm a psychiatrist, so I've been treating people for many years. And I had an interest in psychedelics starting, in high school and college when I did them surreptitiously, of course, and then took a long hiatus of decades from them. But all this time I've been telling people, I'd like to do it again someday. And then with the whole renaissance of psychedelics in the last few years, I've become more interested in reading up on it, took a course, and decided that I wanted to sort of put my toes back in the water. And I had heard about these retreats and said, why not? And discovered Eleusinia, and it just seemed to really be a good place to go. And met with Jessica online, could tell that she was really solid. It was a solid program. And I said, well, let's go for it. Been sort of interested in this area for a long time. And I know that psychedelics can help catalyze change and speed things up a bit in one's spiritual path. So just seemed to be a good thing to do. Plus I'm going through some transition in my life professionally. And I thought this would be a good time to do it.
So travel went okay and signing up and everything was pretty smooth for you, or how are you feeling for that process?
Oh, yeah. Everything was very smooth, and they kept, Jay kept texting me, Van will be there. I came really just to sort of hang out, did some touristy things there, then went to the airport, got picked up at the airport. It was fun sitting in the courtyard, seeing people who kind of looked like maybe they were going to be going to Eleusinia as well. And sure enough, we sort of connected even just in the waiting area in the courtyard. In the ride over, we had some good conversations and arrived at the retreat and were greeted very warmly. Just felt right at home from the get-go.
Nice. And I know that you set for the orientation. Were you feeling excited after orientation because of the science that was covered, because of your interest?
Oh, yeah. I was excited about a lot of things. The science, just being there, just the environment, knowing that I was going to be, taking a pretty substantial dose of psilocybin the next day. The mixture of sort of excitement and anxiety that was certainly present, not knowing exactly what to expect.
So how was it for you when you were sitting the next day in the morning after the meditation and you were ingesting the psilocybin? Were you feeling excitement, but also still apprehension?
I think more leaning towards the excitement. I didn't have any major fears, but there was a little anxiety, and I enjoyed the ceremony and drinking I got the tea and enjoyed that and just waited for things to happen.
So what did happen? What was the first thing that you experienced, and where did you go?
Well, I think maybe within half an hour, I was definitely having all the usual visual distortions, everything moving, patterns merging, those kinds of things that everybody gets. There was kind of a mixture of emotions. There was a process. It was not all pleasant. There was some pretty negative self-talk, some comparisons between what I was experiencing and what I thought I should experience. There was maybe some disappointment since I was not doing it right. And you and I talked about that. But parts of it were also pleasant. And I moved around the various stations, which was encouraged. So I was inside, outside, did the VR. It was nice to see the staff there sort of present, but not intrusive at all. Just to know that they were there, felt very safe, very, very contained. I was also very quiet. I didn't feel like talking at all. Jessica would sort of come around, maybe sit next to me, and didn't want to talk to her, didn't want to talk to anybody. It was very much an introspective experience. But then a little later, maybe after several hours, as I was coming down, I did feel kind of more talkative. I actually had a very nice conversation with Jessica. We shared some interests about consciousness and physics. And so we were able to discuss that in some depth. And that was nice. But coming down was actually quite easy. I remember, many years ago coming down off LSD and being just feeling lousy, just feeling crappy. This wasn't like that at all. This was very mellow. By the time we had dinner, I felt like I was pretty much back to earth.
And afterwards, you felt pretty grounded right away.
I felt peaceful. I felt very calm, open. So we had dinner that night and we talked about our experiences and we were laughing. And so that was good.
How was it to divide your experience as a human being yourself and also professionally, having been a psychiatrist for so many years?
My intent was not to, even though I had an intellectual interest in thinking, and I think about how it could be applied to my practice, I went for myself. This was for me. So I wasn't really thinking about it from a professional standpoint. I was thinking about what am I going to get out of this personally? So I didn't necessarily really want to talk a whole lot about my profession when I was there, though it did come up.
And what has carried forward? Has there been anything that you found useful to carry forward in how you're feeling?
I do want to pursue this. I think of, my week at the retreat as not being an end in itself, but just maybe an opening to maybe pursue this practice further.
Do you feel well prepared to continue the practice? Did you feel like you had sufficient education to let it be a door for continued practice?
Yes. You guys are just fantastic at teaching, telling us what to expect, explaining what the experience was like, answering questions. The mushroom cultivation course was very, very helpful. How to make it an ongoing practice rather than a one-time thing.
I like your story because you share that self-talk, that negative self-talk that often does come through in some people's first initial experiences. So did you find value in that, even though it was challenging and not always pleasant?
Part of me was caught off guard because the negative self-talk is something that has really subsided a lot compared to when I was younger. So I was surprised that it came up again. I'm not exactly sure what that means. I think you told me in the integration that getting it out in the open means there's still more work to be done. So that may be the case. I do have a therapist who I haven't seen for a while, but it's worth exploring. Why does this kind of stuff persist for so long, and why does it reemerge?
Yeah. And from my experience, just for listeners so they can hear this, is that it's very, very common for people, their first macrodose experience, hearing this self-talk come up. And you can actually hear it. So it's different. You're like, wow, what is that? Did you have any somatic release? And did you have any tears?
A little bit on the mini dose. So the mini dose was a different experience, much less of the negative self-talk, much more pleasant. And I actually did meditate during that time. A lot of time meditating, also just looking out over the mountainside. And I remember having some pretty strong feelings of gratitude. I sort of went through a list in my mind of various things I really appreciate that I'm grateful for. Some very pleasant memories of this past summer, which was really nice. That was good. Also, there's some feelings of sadness as I thought about what's in store for us as a civilization, in particular for my kids. I'm an older father. I have young adult children, and I'm concerned about their future as things collapse, which I believe is happening. And I will not be there to take care of them, to protect them. And that was the sadness I experienced when I was doing the mini dose. It wasn't necessarily a negative experience. It wasn't like I was thinking, well, I shouldn't be thinking this, or this is bad, or why am I doing this? It just makes sense. And that's part of what's talked about a lot in what's called, collapsology or deep adaptation, is grieving in advance for all that is going to be lost, all that's going to happen. And so I guess that was part of that experience.
Well, that's really beautiful. And thank you for sharing. I've also experienced similar feelings of like just deep grief. And there's something about the psilocybin that helps us really go there. Did you tap in with your history of Buddhism to feelings of compassion? And did you have any insights about compassion?
Well, I guess it was compassion for my kids as I was thinking about, what their future might be. I like to think that I have a fair amount of compassion in my work for my patients, for the people in my life. So I don't remember having, say, any other sort of super, surges of compassion during the psychedelic experience. But I think that's kind of there much of the time anyway. I mean, that could always be deepened, and of course that's part of a regular Buddhism practice, loving kindness and so on, which I don't necessarily do a whole lot of in my practice, but something that I could pursue further.
I love that you had kind of a challenging experience because it gives you this really honest perspective about the challenges that one could go through. So do you have a personal opinion now that you had your particular experience?
So as I told you, I've been in this business for a very long time and seen a lot of developments and prescribed a lot of medications over the years, and they have a role, certainly. People are very much helped by medication and psychotherapy. But a lot of people cannot be helped or have not made much progress with those traditional treatments who are struggling. And I see psychedelics as being the first real breakthrough in my decades of practice. I mean, everything else has been incremental. This medication's, a smidge better than the one before, fewer side effects, a few more people respond to different types of therapies that are psychotherapies that have been developed, can definitely make a difference. But nothing that I think that psychedelics have the potential to really help a lot of people who have not benefited from other traditional treatments. And that's what the research shows. And I certainly hope that will pan out. I hope it won't get, corrupted or overly commodified or whatever. I hope it doesn't get misused in any way. But I think as it becomes more mainstream, like in Oregon, I just hope we can find a way to make it accessible and affordable, and not just another inequality like everything else in America.
I hope that we continue this practice, and I'm super grateful for you to come on and share your experience about feeling grief for the world, feeling, compassion for your children and that, and then moving through that experience of self-talk. Was there anything that we didn't go into that you wanted to go into?
Other than just to say how grateful I am to you and everybody at the retreat. And I told you, you create such a wonderful holding environment where one feels safe, cared for, the love you guys feel, the commitment you show to what you do is so apparent. Not, super touchy-feely or, woo-woo. It's grounded in science, but also in solid spirituality. I just really appreciate that. All of us, on the van ride back to the airport, we're just talking about what a great experience it was and how much we benefited from it and what a great place it is.
Oh, thank you so much. I have so much gratitude for Jessica for walking the line of science so firmly. So thank you so much for mentioning that. So thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you all so much for listening. You can find all the information that you need to learn everything about this retreat on eleusiniaretreat.com. We are a retreat that offers ongoing integration support, breathwork classes, and cultivation support after you have attended this retreat. It's an amazing experience that's one of its kind. If you're looking for a science-based retreat, something out of the box, something to change your life, something to add to your practice, this is where you really need to start, eleusiniaretreat.com.